Well, Felix and Elgia,
Yes.
we were conspiring here that if you need 2 hours, we'll give it to you. But because you are in this matter of what has gone out in the media as as heavy expenditure by this committee, which you haven't seen so far, but the meals we've taken and the tea and the water is courtesy of Elgia. Maybe you can start by telling the country who is Elgia, and then make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable chairs, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you that we won't take 2 hours. On the contrary, honorable chairs, we want to try and take us a very short time to highlight on some of the key issues. As a starting point, the Electoral Law and Governance Institute for Africa is a regional organization that works across Africa to support and strengthen democratic institutions, electoral processes, support to the legislature. Also, we also work very closely with the judiciaries around Africa and indeed in Kenya as well, to support and strengthen the electoral dispute resolution. As a regional organization, we work very closely with the African Union, Pan-African Parliament, the African Court based in Arusha. We also work and just concluded a memorandum of understanding with the East African community. Honorable chairs, you'll be happy to note that on the basis of some of the work that we have done, we've also increasingly received invitation recently from the Chief Justice of Zambia to support the Zambian judiciary on electoral dispute resolution, owing to the work that we did with the Kenyan judiciary from the magistracy all the way to the Supreme Court. Honorable chairs, we, as you've rightfully noted, Your Excellency, see ourselves as an amicus or as a friend to this committee. And therefore, the perspectives that we are going to share is born out of the work that we have done in the continent, but also to share and shed light and perspectives on some of the regional and international best practices, but also is born out of the deep conviction of the work of this committee. Ladies and gentlemen, I do recall that in this country since '92, whenever the country went dangerously close to the precipice, it was the outcome of constructive dialogue such as what we're having here today that pulled us back from the precipice. That was the case in '97 with the IPPG, the case in 2002 with the CKRC, the National Accord in 2008, Kriegler Waki Commissions, the Committee of Experts in 2010, as well as the Orengo Kiraitu Bipartisan Committee of 2016. Honorable chairs and committee members, we're going to address you primarily on basically 3 issues. One on the electoral justice and related matters, because essentially that is what the work that we do in Kenya, but also the work that we do in the continent. We're also going to talk on the fidelity to political parties and make very brief remarks on that, but also then talk briefly about outstanding constitutional matters. Honorable chairs, the elections that we held on August the 9th, 2022 was the 7th multi-party election since the country reverted back to multi-party democracy. And over time, at least over the last 3 electoral cycles, we have seen incremental improvements, at least in the technical and operational level in the electoral process. But there have also been challenges. And there have been challenges on election management and administration, and also challenges on the legal framework for elections, among others. Now, if you analyze the elections that Kenya has held since '92, I respectfully submit, honorable chairs, that this country finds itself in a phenomenon called the inconclusive electoral cycle. Simply put, it denotes a situation where elections do not bring finality or conclusion. Elections reveal certain challenges, shortcomings, and in certain instances problems. The same are not addressed and are imported in the subsequent elections. That is why, honorable chairs, some of the issues that you are dealing with here today, including reconstitution of IEBC, issues of electoral justice, have been with us since '92, and they were not conclusively or effectively dealt with. Countries that undergo electoral cycles have two characteristics. Number one, election campaign or electioneering is a permanent feature that begins immediately the president is sworn in and continues relentlessly until the next election is held. The second, the countries, Kenya, Chad, Democratic Republic of Congo are some of the examples. The second attribute of countries undergoing through this electoral cycle is that electoral reforms are either stalled or they are skewed. This has been the case in Kenya without naming examples, but also a typical example is Tanzania, where the constitutional review process in 2015 outrightly collapsed. Now, if you look at the Kenyan electoral landscape, at least over the last electoral cycle, there are certain systemic and recurring features of these elections that have existed with us to date, and some of which this dialogue committee is currently dealing with. And these are some of the issues that we want to make a proposal on with a view to reforming or securing electoral justice or the credibility of elections in this country. The first, honorable chairs, is on election management and administration, or if you may, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. As I've noted, if you look at our elections over the last electoral cycle, there have been incremental progress. But again, there have been certain persistent challenges that have featured since 2022. One, of course, that was dealt with by the Supreme Court was on the corporate governance, the question of disunity and division within the commission, the question of elite interference in the electoral process by both sides of the political divide, if you may, but also the constitutional and legislative design on the structure of the commission. Honorable chairs, as I've noted, we've had to demonstrate how problematic this problem has been, is to appreciate the fact that we've had 7 multi-party elections since '92. And over that period of time, the structure, the outlook, and the composition of the Electoral Commission has also changed 7 times. The Chesoni Commission, the Kivuitu Commission, the IPPG Commission of 2002, the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, IIC, that managed the 2010 referendum, Amirizaka IEBC, Chebukati IEBC, and the Chebukati Cherera IEBC of 2022. As the country prepares for the 8th multi-party elections, we are talking about the need to reconstitute the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and that would be effectively the 8th commission to manage the 8th multi-party election since 2002. If you look at the international best practices of designing an electoral commission, and part of what I want to persuade this committee to consider is that there are 3 criteria that are required to design a commission. Number 1 is the legitimacy and acceptance, the perceived degree of legitimacy or acceptance of the commission, perceived degree of independence and autonomy, perceived degree of service, and finally the perceived degree of service delivery. These are the 3 tests that are usually invoked to assess a credible electoral commission. In this continent, it's probably the Ghana Electoral Commission and the South African Electoral Commission that meets these 3 tests. Whereas there have been progress in the Electoral Commission, and are mindful of the work that IEBC did in 2022, these 3 tests have not fully been realized. And I think this dialogue committee may make recommendations on improving the Electoral Commission to meet this test. Honorable Chair, since '92 or since independence, the country has experimented with various designs of the electoral management bodies. We have tinkered with the law, we have adjusted regulations and changed personnel, and yet the outcome seems to me to be more of the same. So what then are some of the key recommendations in reconstituting IEBC? The first, Honorable Chairs, is that the three electoral cycle, 2013, 2017, and 2022, has given this country enough adequate experimentation or experiment with the independent model of the Commission. And it seems to me, and given the fact that I work in elections or strengthening the electoral in the continent, I come from the school of thought that I am deeply convinced that this country needs an independent, expert electoral commission. But in 2014, I did a master's degree in law and a research dissertation on reforming election management and administration. In as much as I believed very strongly on an expert model electoral commission, what I received in terms of and contained in this thesis, in terms of the recommendation across the board, shocked me. That increasingly the country preferred an IPPG-based model. I disagreed with it, but I came up and had that as my conclusion because I had to pay attention to the comments and the feedback and the opinion of the respondents that I interviewed. Now, I then questioned the efficacy looking at the work of similar commissions in Africa. In 2015, Mozambique adopted the IPPG model arising from Kenya. Now, what Frelimo did was essentially to buy all the commissioners that were nominated by Renamo. Again, in DRC, that is exactly what happened. But if you look at Kenya and election management as a context, if you look at the last three electoral cycles, I've come to the conclusion that in as much as I have supported very strongly the expert independent model, I think the situation and the Kenyan context, and also mindful of the 2002 elections, which is probably one of the best elections this country has ever had, I think this committee should consider a mixed model of IPPG and expert commission. The second thing is this committee will have to make a recommendation on dealing with the structure and the design of the Independent Electoral Commission, and I'm talking about the relationship between the Secretariat as well as the Commission. If you look at the Electoral Commission since the last three electoral cycles, there have been tension. In 2013, the tension between the then chairperson Ahmed Isaac and the CEO Oswago. In 2017, there was tension between the chair, Chebukati, and Ezra Chiloba. There was also in 2017 tension between the commissioners themselves. And I think in 2022, we had and we saw what happened in Bomas, serious disunity among the commission. In as much as the Supreme Court dealt with this issue, I think this committee would have to make a recommendation, possibly modeled around the Ghana Electoral Commission, where the two centers of power, that is the obvious result and outcome of the legal framework that we have now, that creates two centers of power, would have to be addressed. Let me move to the second issue, which is on boundaries delimitation. Honorable Chairs, the first delimitation exercise in Kenya was following the 2010 Constitution was completed in 2012. And the legal framework that we had there was a schedule within IEBC. Now this law was spent because it was designed to guide the first delimitation exercise. And a remarkable feature during that first process is that the transitional provisions of the Constitution protected certain constituencies. Now, the second delimitation review exercise that the country is expected to undertake in accordance with Article 89 was expected to have commenced after 8 years, and that is in 2020, but also be concluded by March of 2024. Now, if you consider the fact that in the second delimitation exercise, there are no protected constituencies, in other words, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission would have to apply Article 89 to the fullest. I'm persuaded to believe that the time that we have is not sufficient to complete this. Our recommendation, Honorable Chairs, is that this committee or Parliament or the judiciary should consider increasing this time frame probably for 18 months, and in this regard, I agree with the recommendation by IEBC, considering the fact that the Legale IIBRC Commission took about 4 years to complete that task. One of the lacuna, the legal gap that we have, as I've pointed out, is that the law that is supposed to guide this process has lapsed, and as a matter of urgency, Parliament needs to enact the amendments to the IEBC Act to make provisions for a legal framework to guide the second delimitation exercise. The third issue, Honorable Chairs, we have of course made a number of recommendations, but I'm only picking on what I think extremely important. The third issue, Honorable Chairs, is on the voter registration or the voter register and maintenance of the voter register itself. Honorable Chairs, international best practices establishes 3 criteria for assessing the efficacy and reliability of the voter register. And these are, number 1, is the voter register a comprehensive role with adequate geographical representation? The second test is that is the voter's register an authoritative role? And finally, is the voter register accurate and verifiable? If you look at the Kenyan voter register, since this register was completed in 2012, and when we did the voter register, the country migrated, arising from the Kriegler Commission, or to integrate technology, the BVR, in the voter registration process. Now, in pre-2010 dispensation, we had what is called an optical marker reader, which was a manual process. And Kriegler pointed out the problems with the OMR system, which was reliability, verifiability, and the authenticity of that voter register.